The silence in our bedroom wasn't the peaceful kind. It was a heavy, suffocating blanket that had been settling over my marriage to Elena for 3 years. My name is David, and for a long time I lived in a state of perpetual self-doubt. I'm a senior partner at a top-tier law firm in downtown Chicago, a job that requires me to be sharp, decisive, and commanding. But the moment I crossed the threshold of our suburban home in Oak Park, that man disappeared. I became a ghost haunting my own hallways. I remember one Tuesday evening vividly. The sun was dipping below the horizon, casting long, skeletal shadows across our manicured lawn. I had brought home a bouquet of peonies, her favorite. I found her in the kitchen, staring at her reflection in the dark window above the sink. When I touched her shoulder, she flinched as if I were a stranger. "I'm exhausted, David," she said before I could even say hello. The peonies stayed on the counter, unwatered, until they wilted. I thought if I worked harder, if I took over the cooking, the cleaning, and the mental load of our lives, the woman I married would return. I thought the lack of intimacy was a symptom of her stress, but space had turned into a canyon, and I was tired of shouting across the void. I spent my nights staring at the ceiling, wondering if I had somehow failed as a man. Before we go deeper into this story, take a second and hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and let us know where you're watching from. I'm curious to know how far these stories travel. Our 7th anniversary should have been a turning point, the year we stopped the bleeding. I spent months planning a trip to a secluded, one high-end resort in the Ozarks. I wanted us away from the noise of Chicago, away from the pings of her work emails and the pressure of our social circle. I booked a cabin with a private view of the lake, imagining we would spend the evenings talking by the fire like we used to when we were 24 and broke. The drive down was a 5-hour exercise in loneliness. Elena sat in the passenger seat of our SUV, her face illuminated by the harsh blue light of her phone. "Can we just have this weekend?" I asked softly as we crossed the state line. "No phones? Just us?" She didn't even look up. "I'm managing a crisis, David. Not everyone has the luxury of switching off like you do." The crisis lasted the entire weekend. On Saturday night, I had arranged a private dinner on the deck. The air was crisp, the wine was expensive, and the stars were brilliant. I reached across the table to take her hand, my heart hammering against my ribs. I wanted to tell her I missed her. I wanted to ask what happened to us. She pulled her hand back to reach for her wine glass, her eyes cold and dismissive. "Is this all you think about, David? Physicality? It's honestly pathetic how much you need this validation. I'm tired, I'm stressed, and you're acting like a teenager." That was the moment the scale broke. It wasn't just about the bedroom anymore. It was about the fundamental erosion of my dignity. A week after the vacation, the mask finally slipped. It was a rainy Thursday morning, the kind where the clouds hang low over Lake Michigan. Elena was in the shower, the steam billowing out from under the door, and she had left her iPad unlocked on the marble kitchen island. I wasn't a man who snooped. I had never felt the need to check her messages because I trusted her implicitly, perhaps to a fault. But then, the iPad chimed. A notification banner slid across the top of the screen. The sender was M. Miller. The message read, "I missed the way you looked at the gallery last night. I can't stop thinking about the penthouse. Can't wait for Friday." My heart didn't just break, it hardened into a diamond. The gallery was a charity event she told me was ladies only. The penthouse was a location she had never mentioned. I didn't scream. I didn't confront her. I simply took a photo of the message and put the iPad back exactly where it was. When she walked out, smelling of lavender and expensive soap, I was reading the news. "Heading to that consultation today?" I asked. "Yes," she lied, barely looking at me. It's going to be a long night." I wasn't going to be the pathetic husband anymore. I hired Elias Vance, a private investigator known for his surgical precision in domestic surveillance. We met in a dimly lit diner in the West Loop. Elias pushed a manila folder across the sticky table. "Marcus Miller," Elias began, his voice like gravel. "Real estate developer by day, bottom feeder by night. He specializes in high net worth consultations. Here's the GPS log from your wife's car. On Tuesday, When she told you she was at the library, she was parked at a gated estate in Lake Forest for 4 hours. On Friday, the day of her late meeting, she checked into the Drake Hotel under a corporate alias. He showed me the timestamp photos. Elena and Marcus walking close enough to share breath. And Elena smiling at him with a light in her eyes I hadn't seen in half a decade. Every photo was a jagged piece of glass cutting into my memory of our marriage. Elias had even captured audio from a directional mic. Elena complaining about the anchor around her neck, referring to me. I wasn't just being cheated on, I was being mocked. The betrayal ran deeper into my pockets than I ever imagined. While she was denying me the basic affection of a spouse, she was systematically gutting our future. I spent a Saturday morning with my lead forensic accountant, Marcus Thorne, in a high-rise office overlooking the river. She's been creative, David, Thorne said, circling entries on a ledger. She set up a shell corporation called EV Design Consultants. Every month for the last 2 years, she's been paying herself for consulting work that never happened. That money was then wired to a brokerage account in the Cayman Islands. We're talking nearly $350,000 total. She wasn't just planning an exit. She was planning an execution. She wanted to leave me with the debt of the Oak Park house while she sailed off on a gilded lifeboat built with my sweat. She thought I was too pathetic to look at the books. She thought my love for her acted as a blindfold. Before we continue, take a second and share your thoughts so far on this story below. I read every single one. Instead of filing for divorce immediately, I played the role of the doting, oblivious husband for another month. It was a masterclass in psychological warfare. I would kiss her cheek when I left for work, ignore the scent of unfamiliar cologne on her skin, and then listen to her talk about how stressed she was. I watched her manipulate me in real time. She would pick fights about the smallest things, a dish left in the sink, a missed phone call, just to have an excuse to storm out of the house. I let her win every argument. I apologized for things I didn't do. I made myself look as small and weak as possible to ensure she stayed arrogant. The more comfortable she felt, the more evidence she left behind. I was the spider and she was the fly, happily buzzing toward the web. My lawyer, Sarah Jenkins, was a specialist in high-asset divorces. She showed me how Elena was coordinating her denial of our relationship with her legal timeline. Elena was trying to build a case that I was emotionally neglectful to justify a larger alimony settlement and a bigger share of the assets. She's telling her friends, "You're a cold, workaholic husband who ignores her," Sarah said. She's setting the stage to play the victim of a lonely marriage. She even contacted a therapist 6 months ago, not to get help, but to create a record of trying to save the marriage while claiming you refused to participate. But I had the counter evidence. I had my own logs of her refusing my touch, her ignoring my requests for date nights, and the PI's logs proving her business trips were romantic getaways. We had every wire transfer, every dinner receipt, and every lie documented in a 200-page dossier. The climax of my plan arrived at the annual Heritage Charity Gala at Navy Pier. Elena insisted we attend because she wanted to network with Marcus and his wealthy associates. I stood in front of the mirror in our master bedroom, adjusting my tuxedo with a calm I didn't know I possessed. Elena walked in, wearing a deep emerald dress that cost more than a mid-sized sedan. "You look expensive, Elena," I said, my voice as flat as a desert floor. "It's a big night for the firm, David," she replied, checking her reflection and ignoring me. "Marcus expects a lot of donors. Try to be social. Don't just stand in the corner talking about law." I smiled, a thin, sharp line. "Don't worry, I have a feeling I'm going to be the life of the party tonight." Inside the ballroom, amidst the clinking of champagne glasses and the low hum of the Chicago elite, I saw Marcus. He was tall, tanned, and wearing a suit that cost as much as my first car, likely paid for with the money Elena had siphoned from our bank account. "David, good to see you finally made it out of the office," Marcus boomed, extending a hand for a power move grip. I held his gaze, my hand steady. "I wouldn't miss it, Marcus. I've been hearing so much about your developments, especially the ones that require so much of my wife's personal time." Elena stiffened beside me. "I know about the offshore account, Marcus, and I know the Southside project just had a stop work order placed on it this morning because the funding Elena provided was flagged as suspicious." Elena's face went from shock to pure, unadulterated rage. David, you're making a scene. You're being paranoid and pathetic again. Stop this right now. I'm done being pathetic, Elena, I said. The ballroom seemed to go quiet around us. I reached into the inner pocket of my tuxedo and pulled out a small, tacky, heavy ivory envelope. It looked like an invitation, but it was a death warrant for our marriage. I handed it to her. Happy anniversary, Elena. A few weeks late, but I think you'll find this gift illuminating. Inside wasn't jewelry. It was the summons for a divorce and a comprehensive list of her financial crimes, complete with photos of her and Marcus at the penthouse. Before we go deeper, I would love to hear your point of view. Tell me what part hit you the hardest in my story and share your thoughts in the comments. The scene was quiet but intense. Elena opened the envelope, and as she read the first page, her hand began to shake. David, this is a misunderstanding, she whispered, her eyes darting toward Marcus, who was already trying to melt into the crowd like a coward. Is it? I asked. Ew, because the forensic accountant didn't think it was a misunderstanding. Neither did the PY who photographed you on that balcony in the Gold Coast. I walked away without another word. I had already moved my belongings out of the house that afternoon while she was at work. I had a suite waiting for me at a hotel downtown, and my lawyers were already filing the paperwork to freeze all joint assets. She was left standing in the middle of the gala, holding the evidence of her own betrayal for everyone to see. 2 months later, we were in a sterile conference room for the first deposition. Elena looked exhausted, her designer glow replaced by dark circles. Her lawyer, a man who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, tried to argue for a fair split. My client has contributed significantly to the household, he began. Sarah Jenkins didn't even look up from her tablet. Your client contributed $350,000 of my client's earnings to a Cayman account and spent $40,000 on luxury hotels for her lover. In the state of Illinois, that is the definition of dissipation of marital assets. We aren't here to negotiate a split. We're here to discuss how she's going to pay him back. I watched Elena's face. The realization was finally sinking in. She had no leverage. She had no Marcus. She had nothing but the lies she told herself. As the divorce proceeded, Elena's life began to unravel. Without my salary and our joint credit, she couldn't maintain her lifestyle. She found out the hard way that Marcus Miller wasn't the savior she thought he was. Marcus was a serial philanderer who used women like Elena to fund his failing developments. He was a fraud, and Elena had been his mark. The moment he realized she was no longer a source of income and that her husband was a senior partner who knew his secrets, he ghosted her. He didn't answer her calls. He didn't offer her a place to stay. He left her in the wreckage she had created. She was now living in a studio apartment above a noisy bar, working as a junior designer for a firm she used to laugh at. I discovered through the grapevine that Elena had tried to sue Marcus for the money she invested with him, but because the money was technically stolen from our joint marital funds, my legal team was able to intercept any potential settlement. Every move she made to dig herself out only buried her deeper. She had denied me intimacy and respect for years, thinking she was the smarter player in the room. Now, the world was denying her the comfort and security she had taken for granted. She was living in a small apartment, realizing that the excitement she chased had left her with a life she couldn't afford and a reputation she couldn't fix. If you were in my shoes facing a situation like this, what would you do? Share your thoughts in the comments. We had to meet one last time to sign the final decree. She looked like a shadow of herself. No designer clothes, no arrogant smirk. She asked me, why did you have to do it so publicly? Why couldn't we just talk? I looked at her and said, I tried to talk for 3 years, Elena. I begged for your time and your honesty. You weren't listening. You only start listening when there's something to lose. She signed the papers with a trembling hand. With the woman who had called me pathetic for wanting to be loved by my own wife was now the one begging for a shred of my attention. I didn't give it to her. I stood up, took my copy of the decree, and walked out into the Chicago rain, feeling lighter than I had in a decade. After the papers were signed, I took a long trip to the Pacific Northwest. I hiked through the Olympic National Forest, breathed the mountain air, and remembered who I was before I became the pathetic husband. I realized that the regret she felt wasn't my burden to carry. I had reclaimed my life, my finances, and my dignity. I started a new chapter, one where honesty was the baseline and respect was non-negotiable. I stopped being a ghost in my own home and started living again. I realized that her rejection was never about me. It was about her own lack of integrity. And a year later, I'm sitting in a small cafe in Seattle. I'm seeing someone new, someone who values honesty and doesn't use stress as a weapon. I heard Elena move back in with her parents in Indiana. She lost her firm, her reputation, and the man who would have done anything for her. She thought her silence was a weapon she could use to control me. She didn't realize that my silence was a countdown to her own destruction. She had traded a lifetime of security for a few months of excitement with a fraud, and now she had neither. Revenge isn't always about a grand explosion. Sometimes it's just about stepping back and letting someone face the consequences of their own choices. Elena chose to deny our marriage. I chose to accept her decision and give her exactly what she asked for, a life without me. She wanted space. Oh, no, and I gave her an ocean of it. She wanted excitement, and I gave her the thrill of a legal battle she couldn't win. Most importantly, I gave myself the one thing she refused to give me: peace. And as for my channel, Family Secrets and Revenge, we always get to the bottom of the truth. Thank you so much for following my journey through this difficult chapter. If you found strength in this story, or if it reminded you to never settle for less than respect, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel, Family Secrets and Revenge. Your support means the world to us and helps us share these powerful narratives. Don't forget to comment below with your overall thoughts on the story. I'll be down there reading and responding. Until next time.